Kevin Clear here with a knife video for you. And today we're looking at a knife that is kind of interesting. So I want to give you guys a little bit of background here and tell you why this is a particularly difficult review for me to do. And that's because, well, I have one major issue with this knife. I also have a lot of major likes. And then there's one other thing here, which is this knife is smaller than I normally like to carry. So that's, that affects my thoughts about it as well. But let me give you my general sort of take on the knife, my impression of the knife first, what I have a problem with, and then we'll get into the actual, meat of the review. So my overall impression of this is a beautiful knife, fantastically designed by a company that I didn't expect to mature as quickly as they have, right? Coming out with a knife like this that is understated and just doesn't try to be flashy and gaudy, but wants to stand out from the crowd just by its simplicity and its beauty. This is a huge win. I really, really like those things about this knife. And for me, when I was talking to QSP about getting some knives for review, this did come from them for review. This was on my list, even though it's too small for me, because I was just so impressed with the aesthetics of this design. Now, having said that, there's one now. So there's one big issue with it, but the crazy thing is, I like the look of this knife and I like the performance in every other way of this knife so much that I overall end up feeling a real connection to this knife, even though it has one glaring issue. And that's rare for me. I can't tell you how many times I have owned a knife and it just has one little thing that I don't love. And that one little thing bugs me and bugs me and bugs me until I can't take it and I end up just getting rid of the knife. This knife, um, when I first got it, and some of you who saw the first impressions will already know what I'm talking about. When I first got it, I immediately found that I could not open this knife with one hand, and I still can't. I have to do this. This is how I open the knife, and that's fine. It works okay, but I generally am not going to be very pleased about that in a knife. But this one, I can I yeah, and as you can see, I'm trying there to open it one handed, and I just can't do it. Okay, so that would be really, really off. Well, for me, that's hugely off-putting, right? I'm like everybody else. I want a knife that flicks. I want a knife I can spidey flick. I want a knife that I can play with a little bit while I'm watching TV or playing video games or whatever. And this guy just doesn't do it. So my expectation when preparing to review this knife and when carrying it and using it was that, you know what, that's going to bother me more and more and more and more until I just can't take it and I end up doing a very, very negative review of this knife. However, the silly thing has just grown on me. And I seem to like it more and more instead of hate it more and more. Um, so I don't know what accounts for that. It's just such a cool diminutive knife. Every time I open it, I've got to tell you one thing, and I suppose a lot of knife guys are this way, but one thing that I really look for in a knife is a great blade, and I love this blade. I love it. It is one of the nicest blades I've ever seen, and I wish there were more blades like this. And QSP, if you're watching, if you would do a version 2 of this knife and make it, 8.5 inches or even 8.25 inches overall, I would be over the moon. That would be such a perfect knife. This is already pretty darn perfect, okay? So now that you know my weird attraction to this knife and you know my one real legitimate issue with this knife, I think that gives you a little bit of the background that you need to kind of follow me through my thought process in this review. So the other thing I want to do, and I'm going to pause for this, guys, and I know it's going to make the video longer, but I'm going to bring this knife in just for 1 second. This, of course, is a Hinderer XM18. It's a Skinner grind, and this is a great knife. I really, really enjoy it. I carry it quite a lot. But I'm bringing this out because Rick Hinderer is a firefighter, and the history of this knife is, by his own admission, connected to his role as a firefighter. Okay. This video will be posting very close to 9/11, either the day before or the day after, I think, if I'm reading ahead in my schedule of hosting right. And so I want to say, one of the great joys of my life is working as a first responder, as a firefighter. And the main thing I want to say, even though a lot of them don't watch my videos, for some of them that do, and hopefully eventually you'll all see this, I have to say I have a great honor and a great privilege to work with the men and women that I work with. They're all absolute professionals. They are all very good at their job. They pay great attention to detail. They do such a good job, and they work so hard, and they put in so much time and energy above and beyond what they get paid for, that I've got to just take a minute at this time of year to acknowledge how honored I am and how much I enjoy just being around the guys and girls that I get to be with on the fire department. So sorry about that. I know it makes the video longer, but I just wanted to get that out there because I know this video is going to post right around 9/11. It might even be on the day of. So having said that, let's move on with the review of this knife, beginning with size and weight. So this is a smaller knife, okay? So this is 7 1/8 inches. In fact, it's just a hair under 7 1/8 inches. The blade is 3 1/16. So essentially a 3-inch blade, a 4-inch handle. So like you guys are following me here, right? So we've got about a 7-inch knife overall. The grip area is only 3 1/4 inches, although I can get all of my fingers on it. And that may be one of the things that, that may be one of the reasons that I can kind of forgive this knife for you guys, that one issue that you guys all know about that we've already been discussing. It feels really nice in hand. Okay. The other thing is it's smaller, and I have different expectations. It's almost like I look at this knife as a slip joint or like a locking slip joint or something. I don't even know, but um, that's the size and weight on this. Of course, it only weighs like 3 ounces. So yeah, it carries in pocket really, really well. It's not overly thick. It doesn't have a whole lot of grip area. For someone with really, really big hands, they're probably not going to have enough real estate here. Except, I guess the exception to that would be if you're a big guy with big hands, but you already carry, I don't know, a Spyderco Delica or a Mini Griptilian or something like that. Well, of course, that's fine. You're gonna be just fine with it. Okay, so now that I've gotten the size and weight out of the way, let's go and look at the one thing that I love probably more than anything else about this knife, and that is the blade. It's got this beautiful mirror satin. I'm trying not to, like, you can see my face in there all distorted, but this blade I find to be absolutely incredible. Hold on, let me clean the fingerprints off it again. This will be like the 6th time in the last 2 minutes, but look at that blade. I love this. I could stare at this blade all day, and I do. When I'm carrying this knife, I find myself opening it and just looking at it and doing exactly what I'm doing for you guys right now. This blade looks amazing. Now, not only does it look amazing, but functionally, it's great. So, not crazy thick blade stock here, just a little under 1/8 of an inch. It's relatively thin behind the edge, but it's not insane. Like it's not, I don't know, 5 millimeter or 5 thousandths or something, but it's reasonably thin behind the edge. So this cuts really, really nicely, and it's a really well balanced blade. So we've got this drop point with a saber grind. I love the multi-directional grind on here. And so all of those things, this is honestly, guys, one of my favorite blades. I just love the way this is finished. Now, I see there are some heavy spots here and there, but that actually just adds character to me. I really, really enjoy this blade a ton, and it's S35 VN steel, and seems, at least in my use, and I've put a fair bit of use on this. Granted, now let me say this. I don't see this as a hard use knife, and because of the size of the handle, like I'm not going to go out and start skinning an elk with this. I'm not going to go out and start doing a lot of, wood processing with it. It's just small and diminutive, and I think of this more as sort of an office carry or a city carry, something along those lines. And so I like it a whole lot, but I certainly don't think of it as a hard use knife. But in all the use that I've put this blade to, it has performed really, really well. And the S35VN has held an edge really well. I don't have a Rockwell hardness tester in my garage, so I haven't tested it or anything like that. The testing has been cutting stuff and stropping the blade and sharpening it a little bit, and it has performed really, really nicely for me. So I'm in love with this blade. Okay, let's move on to the action. This is the thing that I'm most in love with. It is on bearings, and that's fine. It's very smooth, so it'll do the whole drop shut thing, which is enjoyable. To me, it's almost like as I say, a locking slip joint. It's not an action that I'm going to be flicking all the time or that I'm going to be getting a great deal of enjoyment and satisfaction out of. But I can open it when I want to open it, although it does take a little extra effort. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about the action. The lockup is really solid. The blade's solid. There's no blade play. So all of that stuff is fine. But the fact that you can't deploy it with one hand is a little off-putting to me. And perhaps there's somebody watching this who can deploy this with one hand. I know I talked to Levon from the Knife Nuts podcast, and he has no problem opening his. So I don't know. Maybe it's just my fat fingers or something. But for whatever reason, I can't get this to open. And I'd love to hear, let me know if you've got one and it works fine for you. Hey, great. I'm really, really glad, because that would just make this knife that much better. But to me, that's the one big issue. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on action, because I've already kind of described my issue with the action. Now let's move on to the handle. And again, this is something I love. I just look at this. It's clean, it's attractive, the colors are fantastic. This is a really, really nice design. And then if you flip it over to this side, even better. We've got this really nice carbon fiber inlay. It adds a little bit of texture, adds a little bit of visual appeal. Movable pocket clip, by the way, which seems to be something I haven't seen in a while. So we've got titanium pocket clip, milled clip that works really well, by the way, and it is left or right hand repositionable. We've got this nice inlay. We've got this sort of decorative pivot, which I don't love, but I also don't hate. I can't, to me, it fits the knife okay. Doesn't really detract from it. And so the handle, oh yeah, and fit and finish, of course. This is raised. So if I show you, let's see here. So this is raised on purpose. So it's not that I can't feel it or anything. You can feel it, but the gap is really, really clean. It's even. You can't, you're not looking at this going, man, it looks like they slipped up. Look at the backspacer, just perfectly fitted there. So everything, in terms of fit and finish, this is very well put together. Finally, ergonomics. Now, ergonomics is what you would expect for a handle of 4 inches. Okay, it's definitely not uncomfortable, and in use, I have no problem using this knife. Okay, and I've used it a fair bit, but as I said before, it's a little smaller, and therefore I don't find this to be like the knife I'm going to take if the zombies come. Okay, I want something a little more hand filling and a little more confidence inspiring. But for a small knife, this is absolutely fine. It's not uncomfortable. There are no hot spots, so that side of ergonomics is just fine. And so there you go, guys. Overall, you've kind of heard my assessment. There's a lot of things that I really, really like about this knife, and it's weird that I end up liking them so much that I kind of overall enjoy this knife an awful lot. And I think these are coming in at a pretty reasonable price point as well. I can't recall off the top of my head what the price is. I know reviewers should check that beforehand, but you guys all have Google, so you can obviously find out for yourselves. But I want to say this is a pretty budget-friendly titanium frame lock. Okay, let's get to a couple of comparisons. I don't have much that's in this size range because I don't own much that's in this size range. But this knife just being a little bit bigger, this is the Rake M875. I like this a lot. This is more the kind of size that I enjoy carrying and what you'd see in my pocket from day to day most often. Oh, here's another one. Let's flip this guy over. The Gavco Thresher is not all that much bigger. Again, it's bigger, but it's not a huge amount bigger. All right, and this also, I guess, now this can stand in for a number of the Mass Drop collaborations, which are all really, really nicely done, and also provide sort of another, what would you say, budget titanium frame lock option. Let's throw in here just the Para 2 and the Rat Model 1 at the end, because everyone is familiar with these knives. So this should give you an idea. If this is the size of knife you like, you can see this is a good bit smaller, okay? Or if this is the knife you own and carry and use all the time, again, you can see now kind of where this stacks up in terms of size. All right, so overall thoughts. Well, look, guys, you know yourself better than I do. And so if this is a knife that you find as attractive as I find it, then yeah, go out and get one. I think you'll enjoy it. If you know that not being able to flick this knife out is going to be just a deal breaker for you, well then I totally get that as well. And in that case, yeah, you definitely, this is one to pass. Okay. Again, check the comments because maybe I just got a weird one-off thing that won't work for me and everyone else has no problems. And if you have one of these and I'd love to have you weigh in and sort of let me know if that's the case. But overall, I do enjoy this knife quite a bit, largely because of the blade and the overall look. I find this to be one of the nicest looking knives that's out there right now. It's just simple and clean and fantastic. So so I love the look of this knife so much that I'm willing even to overlook a huge glaring issue, which is I can't deploy the knife with one hand. Maybe that wasn't the intent. And if you're from QSP and you're like, Kevin, it's a two-handed opening knife, it just happens to lock. That's great. Maybe, and in that case, you can disregard everything I've said about that. All right, so there you go, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can probably pick this up. The best place is going to be White Mountain Knives because you can save yourself 10% off using my discount code, which is Sharp Stuff. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe one more time, and we will talk to you soon.